Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 161, How to Successfully Use STEM to Teach Social and Emotional Learning. Oh, have you ever wondered how you are going to cover everything and focus on the most important aspects of learning, and that's social and emotional learning? Well, guess what, my friend? Today, I have a very special guest and friend who happens to be a genius and a learning theorist, and that is Dr. Jen Verhoeven, who is on the podcast this week sharing how to use STEM to teach social and emotional learning and to integrate and to do what we naturally need to do. You have got to hear this. It's going to change your teaching. It really is that good. Take a listen to this episode, and after you've listened, let me know what you think. Leave a review on Apple or a comment on my website, or even write me a quick note in response to this this episode. I would love to share your feedback on the show. All right, so let's jump in. I can't wait for you to hear how important it is to integrate social and emotional learning into everything we do and how that might look in STEM. Hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so again, before we get started, we're still moving our way to STEMCon 2022. So exciting. And if you have not signed up for that yet, then you definitely need to sign up. You can find that at trinadeberyteachingandlearning.com/STEMCon22. Also, I'll link to it in the show notes if it makes it easier for you. We hope to see you there. Today, I have another special guest on the show, Dr. Jen Verhoeven, who is my dear friend and also just an expert on STEM learning and so many things. She's just really incredible. And today, she once again blows my mind like she normally does, and I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say. So let's get on with the show. I'm so excited and thrilled to have back on the show Dr. Jen Verhoeven from Key Learning and culturally responsive learning. You've merged,
yes,
correct?
Yes,
okay,
culturally responsive minds. Yep, we have merged.
Culturally responsive minds. I don't know why I want to throw that learning in.
It's
but
okay.
Anyway, I am so thrilled to have you talking about social and emotional learning and STEM. And first of all, you're a genius. So every time I talk to you, I get a little nervous. And then I'm like, no, she's my friend. It's okay.
I was like...
Yeah.
I usually when I come on here, I honestly don't know what I'm going to be talking about, but you always inspire. And then it just,
That's sweet. No, you inspire. So, but we're early in the morning, so we have to wake our brains up and be ready to go. So, okay. So start with how, because a lot of people struggle with even thinking about how they're going to fit in social and emotional learning and how important that is.
Yeah. I would say, my business partner, Jennifer Terry, she's actually the head of the Culturally Responsive Minds division. Mm-hmm. She and I spent a good part of last year asking that exact question. How does social emotional learning fit with everything else? And I think one of the things we've moved into is, and I think we talked about this last time, is this transcurricular integration. And that's something, even at STEMCon, I'm going to speak to in a couple sessions, is how do we really change the way that school is being taught now, where and here's the issue, right? So because we teach in 5, 6, 7 different subjects, everything gets decontextualized from real life. Like if you think about the problems and the questions that we ask in real life and how we approach things, it's not divided into specific subjects. And so if we're going to try and infuse real world experiences into our schools to make things meaningful for students, that meaning can't come from looking at problems with just these fractionated lenses. Yeah. So the same goes with SEL. Instead of approaching it, the question that people often ask is, how do I add SEL to what I'm doing? And sometimes I think the first thing I want to say is, well, that very question is the wrong approach.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're so right, because it's an everyday part of who we are, and it should be a part of everything that we're doing. So that makes total sense to me.
And sometimes, especially now, I kind of equate learning and teaching as like breathing, right? Like if and if we're in school, it's almost like I go to one class and I spend 2 hours exhaling. It's not possible. And then I go to another class and I spend 2 hours inhaling. And then I go to another class and it's like, spending the 2 hours learning how to just pause between the inhale and the exhale.
Yes.
And it doesn't work that way. If we taught, learning, if we taught school the way we learn, or actually vice versa, if we taught how to breathe the way we do school, nobody would be alive.
No,
exactly. And the breathing and learning come naturally because all of those subjects are integrated into how we approach problems, how we create, how we innovate. It's all connected. SEL is the same way. So rather than thinking about SEL as the separate thing to add into our subjects, SEL is more like, how do we use SEL to support what we're already doing, to integrate it into our day? So one of the ways that I suggest people do that is not thinking of SEL as the content, but thinking of SEL as the method for delivering the content.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love that. Yes.
And part of the issue, I think, is we, when we're trained in professional development, there's an SEL professional development, right? And then there's a curriculum with SEL and all of those things. But I think, and that is part of the problem, is we think it's another curriculum.
Yes.
And what I suggest when people go into SEL, whatever curriculum they have, is there should be teaching strategies that go with it. And if you have an SEL curriculum that doesn't have those teaching strategies, I would argue that it's not actually SEL. So, not true SEL, because, and I want to share a little bit of background, because I know that there's probably a number of people that are new to SEL, but SEL in particular, most SEL curricula, most trainings are based on Castle's 5 different domains. And I'll share those domains: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Okay, so now think about this, right? These are skills. It's not content. It's sort of like how people teach growth mindset, sort of the same thing.
Yes.
You can't teach growth mindset. You can't teach self-awareness in and of itself. You've got to teach it in relation to your other subjects, with your other subjects. Okay. So I totally lost my train of thought.
Yeah. No. Okay. So you're talking about, you're not going to just single it out. We're not singling out like self-responsibility and things like that. That's all happening within what we're already doing, but we're maybe focusing more on conversations. And yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like or feels like to me. Like it felt not, I wouldn't want to say easy, but almost easy, because I already felt really strongly about building relationships. So having these, like, reading a story and it would just spark something. And then we'd have these beautiful conversations, about, empathy and perseverance and being able to like pick yourself back up and how you hurt sometimes and how we help one another and those kinds of things. And it felt like that feels easy instead of saying, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to teach this. So it's sort of all like together.
Yeah. Like, and the way I explain it is, okay, here's the difference, right? And we've talked about this before. It's sort of like driving. If I teach it on paper, I could pass the driver's test and I still can't go on the highway.
Yeah.
Right. Like in the paper, you can say, push the accelerator. Like, let's talk about a simple thing of how do we merge onto the highway, right? Like we can say you approach the highway at the same speed of the highway, you look at your blind spot and you merge in. I can say those things. I can learn them. I can parrot them, but it doesn't count. It won't keep you alive when you're on the highway. You have to have the skill to know and live merging on the highway, right? Like you actually, you have to do it. And
you're right. And even if it's modeled for you and you're right there, you still have to be able to experience yourself.
Yes.
So like how many,
right? Like how many times, like those of you that have kids, this, kids don't learn how to drive by watching you drive. Like even if you're in the car, driving the car, they're not going to pick it up.
No,
you have to get them behind the wheel.
I mean, and I think in the very beginning stages, just like with speaking, speaking to a child and having language and reading to kids and those kind of things. Yes, those are all beginning foundations, but eventually they have to be able to try those things themselves.
Absolutely.
And even if you're supporting them with the scaffolding idea, you're still allowing them the ability to try it on, to try it. That's why I think it's so important to have play. That's why when we talk about taking recess away from schedules, I think that's crazy. Yes, because that's their opportunity to try those things on and learn from failure and learn from mistakes and learn. And I think, and it's a safe way of doing it.
Right. And I would actually back up. You said something which I think is super important that people say and they don't realize it. You said you have to allow them to do these things. And what I would say is this: we don't allow, because learning and the ways of doing these things is actually a natural thing. It's not that we don't allow, but let me provide a different perspective. We restrict the natural ways that students go through these processes. We restrict it. So it's not that we allow these things to happen. It's the fact that we have stopped these things from happening. And when they happen, it's actually a natural process. It's sort of, and again, it's sort of like we allow students to inhale. No, you don't. No. You've restricted kids from inhaling. And what you're doing is you have stopped restricting them.
You've let them do what they naturally do already. That makes so much sense. And I know on the last time that we spoke, I remember having this conversation with you about like how I had gone into the engineering classroom for like a couple of hours because they needed a person to cover it. And how I was like, I just was so surprised at my fourth graders, how much they struggled with creativity and coming up with new ideas. And you said, it's because it's something that they already can do, but we have restricted them. We have not allowed them to those opportunities. And I'm like, you're right. Like we've stifled them. That makes me actually really sad. It's sad. It's a sad situation.
It is a sad situation. And I would say it's a sad situation because, and you know how I feel about this. It's a sad situation because the educators, us experts, have not been allowed to be the experts in our field. Like any experienced teacher, we see what it takes for kids to learn, but we are forced to do things counter to that because unfortunately, our profession is micromanaged by people who were not educated in education, who don't understand that pedagogy, and so, when you're telling students like sit at your desk and write, what you're really doing is you have squashed the natural learning tendency. Trina, you talked about like when kids learn how to talk, right? Okay. Think about, especially those of you that have children, right? We model, but until they talk, they're not talking. I don't know if that makes sense, but but what I'm trying to say is they don't have the skill to form those words until they form those words. And so in a way, it's the same. My students don't learn self-management until they do self-management, until they do self-awareness. And And this is one thing, I had been thinking about this, especially with STEMCon coming up. And even in our groups, oftentimes, we've talked and touched on, I know, Trina, you've touched on this in many of your podcasts about craft versus STEM and the difference there. And how do we look at materials for, whether or not these are good quality materials that bring out the rigor in learning.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this a lot because, going into the SEL realm, it's almost the same thing. You have many different curricula out there, but one of the things I highly suggest as a teacher, you should be looking at is what opportunities do we give our children to practice the skills that bring about social emotional learning, social emotional competence. Right? And again, it's this movement away from thinking about content as being the most important thing.
Yes.
Right? Toward understanding that skills, those 21st century skills, communication, collaboration, creation, right? And critical thinking, those are the things that help our students become lifelong learners. Yeah. But if they don't have that practice, they're never going to be able to do it when they graduate. No. And, I encourage educators to think about it in that way. What is it that students need in order to be lifelong learners, in order to be successful? It's not the vocabulary list that they've memorized.
Yeah.
It's like what you said, Trina, it's the conversations, the collaboration, right? The communication that they bring out. And so back to what my point was, is when we look at an SEL curriculum, and this is why actually we Key Learning has merged with Culturally Responsive Minds, you want to look for curricula that help students name and understand their own emotions.
So that metacognitive piece.
Yes, it's the metacognitive piece, but it's also, so if you're seeing an SEL curriculum that has your students memorize what self-awareness is as a definition, it's not a good curriculum.
No.
Because social emotional learning is about helping students understand their own social emotional learning process. And so, to give you an example, and I do, of course, have to hype up Culturally Responsive Minds because they're a part of us now. When you look at the Culturally Responsive Minds curriculum, what you're going to see is it's not a vocabulary list, it's conversations that students have. And it's conversations around bullying, around bias, around, stereotypes, around emotions. I one of the reasons why actually when a year ago, when we were on these podcasts, if somebody talked about social emotional learning, I could take from like my little tiny class that I took way back when in grad school, right? But it wasn't really in practice. I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to teach it.
Yes.
And then our work with Jennifer Terry of Culturally Responsive Minds, I realized, wait a second. So here's where the merge happened between social emotional learning and STEM education. I'll tell you, a lot of teachers are like, yes, Yen, I love this, but my students right now, especially, don't even have the skills to be able to communicate with each other. They've been online so much that now that they're in a room together, they don't pick up on the social cues of body language, of tone, of, being able to choose which behaviors and ways of being are appropriate in the classroom. And so, and I was like, and even like what's the classic one that we always get, frustration, right? Yeah. When kids get so frustrated, they can't even speak.
Yeah.
And what Jennifer's curriculum does is, I'll tell you, like one of the lessons when I was first looking at it, I'm like, what is this all about? And she's like, well, it starts with helping kids name their emotions.
Yeah.
How brilliant is that?
Yes.
A simple thing is like, if you've got a kid that's got their head down and they're not participating, oftentimes they feel the emotion, but they don't know how to say it. And that adds to the frustration.
Yeah.
So a lot of Jennifer's lessons are like in the beginning, she talks about what emotions do you feel? And then we talk about those emotions. How does that make you feel personally in the body? You know, because of course, and we know this, some kids, when they feel frustrated, they close down. Other kids, when they feel frustrated, they shout. Other kids, when they feel frustrated, may isolate themselves, right? A good social emotional learning curriculum should help kids understand what their personal triggers are and how they handle frustration at a personal level, and also how to manage that frustration at a personal level.
Yeah.
If you're not seeing that in your curriculum, it's not a good curriculum.
No,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, you're right. I totally agree. I think it's very valuable. It also it allows the child to realize that their feelings, like they don't have to feel like they're feeling bad about themselves because they're feeling angry or they're feeling upset. And then they can't separate a feeling from almost your self-worth. And I think when we give them the ability, we allow them and we teach them and we show them and we talk to them about how they're feeling, we are giving them the chance to see, okay, I'm separate from my anger. This situation, I'm feeling angry, but that doesn't mean that I'm an angry, horrible person all the time. It means that this situation has led to me feeling upset. And I do think it makes such a huge, huge difference. And people feel like they don't have time to stop and have these kind of conversations. But if you don't stop, then you're never really going to shape the behavior. You're never going to change anything. And it's going to just cause more loss of time in the classroom anyway.
Because if you don't give them the opportunity to learn how to manage those emotions, they're not managing those emotions, you know? And that's the thing, right? Like you have to give them opportunities to practice these natural born emotions that we all have. We're human. And if they don't have the space for that, the safe space to name it, to talk about it, then they're never going to learn it. So oftentimes I hear people, say, talk about the complaints of, my kids don't ask questions, right, as a frustration. And that's when I go, did you give them time to practice making and asking questions? If you're not giving them time to actually practice that skill, they don't have the skill. And exactly what you were saying, Trina, it's these skills that we're asking kids to do in STEM are the same skills that social emotional learning helps kids practice. And that's where the tie is between SEL and STEM, is you need kids to be able to infer and critically think, right? Well, the opportunities to infer and critically think, the teaching methodologies to infer and critically think should come from your SEL curriculum.
Yes. Yeah. So you're integrating it.
You're integrating it. So, with our Fierce and Fearless STEAM teachers, for example, we have a whole program for Fierce and Fearless STEAM teachers. They follow us for a year. And what I love about that is I'll teach the science, but Jennifer teaches the social emotional learning. So for example, a frustration lesson is simply teaching our students to be able to say, I'm really angry right now. This is what's making me angry, and this is what I need in order to feel less angry. Just that statement alone, can you imagine how that would help you when you're teaching STEM? So that, it's like, and when you see young kids get to the point where it's like, I'm angry because Johnny took my crayons. What would I need Johnny to give those crayons back to me? Imagine if your student could say that. Just think about how significant, right?
It is. Yeah.
And and here's the thing. These skills can be taught in alignment to your STEM. So it could be, oftentimes I hear teachers that say, I only have 15 minutes to do STEM. What do I do? Right. And what I would say is, well, like our curriculum, Culturally responsive minds curriculum, some of these teaching strategies only take 15 minutes to teach. So
Wow.
if you have 15 minutes, it's like, well, why don't we practice these sentence stems?
Mm-hmm.
I'm angry because fill that blank, and sometimes we'll do that with kids now where it's like, okay, um, think about a time when you were angry, put it in a sentence. I'm angry because blank, right? And then what would you have needed during that time to become less angry?
Yeah.
So you start with a past experience and notice how meaningful that is. Every single kid is going to say something different,
Absolutely. Yes,
right?
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not about like standardizing what everybody
No,
says.
no.
It's about teaching them how to name what they need
Mm-hmm.
in order to help with that anger.
Yes, and in order to like move on past that.
Yeah,
And
in
yeah.
order. And so think
And not
about,
even just skip over it, like actually
yes,
acknowledge the feeling and
yes,
allow them to go through that feeling. And then what do I need to do to come out on the other side? So
yes,
yeah, no, that
right.
that makes so much sense.
And so, like, what we're seeing is we have our fierce and fearless teachers practice sometimes. And, here's the thing, SEL can also be a sub plan. So
Mhm.
you can have kids talk about, for instance, one of the things that students practice in our curriculum is understanding culture as a multiplicity. We have church culture, we have family culture, we have ethnic culture, we have age culture. Like, I am a Gen Xer. My
Yeah.
age culture is, I listen to 80s music. I love it. Right. Like, and we can talk about, common movie cultures, right? Like Ferris Bueller
Mhm.
is like a big cultural thing. That's
Yeah.
also from my culture, right? I have Vietnamese culture. Anyways, so we talk about culture in terms of multiplicities. And then we ask students to be able to come from that as well, to understand the different cultures and develop that appreciation for not only their own cultures,
Yes, but
but
for
the
others.
cultures, yeah, for others.
Yeah.
Now think about how that comes into play with science and engineering and math, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes we have this culture, and here's where like it hits with STEM too, of, oh my gosh, she's copying me.
Yeah.
You can't let them copy me, right?
Yes.
That is a culture of school. It's a
Mm.
culture of school.
Yeah.
And how do we teach them the culture of STEM? Actually, that's not exactly copying. You're being inspired by, she was inspired by what you were doing, but notice that she's making it her own. She's making differences in that. She's redesigning it. The engineering process, STEM is a culture. And so when we're teaching, we bring SEL into play with STEM when we go, okay, let's talk about this assumption that you've made that somebody's copying you. Let's talk about this assumption you've made that there's a right or wrong answer, that there's, there
Yes.
is right, or
Yeah.
that there has to be a winner and a
Yeah.
loser.
Yeah.
How
That
does,
is, yeah, that's for sure a school that we're doing more and more of that competitive kind of
oh,
thing in school. So that's what we think is the natural way of behaving.
yes. And then if we know that, if we become aware, this is that self-awareness piece of
Mhm.
SEL. If we become aware that this culture is clashing with the STEM challenges that you're doing, that's
Mhm.
when you talk about it. You
Yeah.
do a compare and contrast, right? Of, okay, what are you thinking? What are your assumptions when you feel this way? Versus sometimes they're just misunderstandings, right?
Yeah.
Like of, how and because now students have that social emotional learning, they see it, they know it, and they can practice it,
Mhm.
because now it's spoken. Now it's this collaboration between, oh, well, my understanding is this way versus their understanding is this way. Can you imagine how much better your classroom would be if if your kids could say those words to
Yeah.
you,
Yep.
to explain it?
Yeah.
Right. So, oftentimes when people say, I don't have time for SEL, what I say is, actually, if you did SEL, you would have more time.
Yes. I totally agree 100%. Mhm. Yeah.
Right. Think
Yes.
about how often we have to pause in our teaching
Mhm.
to help console a child that's so frustrated they can't speak.
Yeah. Yes.
Imagine if that frustration could change into a student that speaks up to you and says, hey, I'm feeling really, frustrated right now because so
Mhm.
and so did this to me. And this is what I need in order to get out of this, in order to move on. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And so these are the things that I see our students doing. I'll give you another example. I know I keep rambling, but I'm so excited about this stuff.
No. That's great.
One of my, every week we meet with Fierce and Fearless, and we talk about what's going on in people's classrooms, and we celebrate. And one of my educators, she talked about how she has a young girl who's really autistic. And again, she does STEM and STEAM, but she teaches that SEL in addition to it. Sometimes they like, it's okay to stop your science. It's not always about just the science, it's the skills behind it, right?
Yes.
And so you can stop and just have these conversations about culture, about communication, about these things. And in doing so, they're going to bring those skills into whatever it is you teach. So I'll give you that example. Is she teaches STEM, but she talked about, the relationship skills. And so there's this one lesson that talks about including everybody under the umbrella to be that culture. So your classroom, you can imagine, is a big umbrella, and everybody under that umbrella belongs in that classroom, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's this young girl, and she's autistic, and oftentimes she gets left out. And when she feels left out, when she feels isolated, she goes off in a corner and shuts down. This is her regular way of being. Okay. So they've practiced this lesson about, the classroom being an umbrella, a culture of belonging. And during this one STEM challenge, she actually spoke up in her group, and she said, "Hey guys, can you just open that umbrella wider to include me?"
Oh,
I was almost in tears when she said that.
That's a huge thing. Yeah.
Right? Like, you're making me teary now, because she spoke up. And because everybody learned about that umbrella,
they
knew.
understood. Yeah, they didn't. Yes, they looked at it differently. So, yeah.
And for the first time, she was invited. She felt like she belonged.
Yeah.
This is why SEL should be taught in everything you do.
Yeah.
Because think about the skill and how that's going to change her life.
Yeah. Forever.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, I'm sorry. I
No,
brought
that
you
was
up to
beautiful.
this.
That's beautiful. Yes. I love that story. I think we have to look for those kinds of moments in our classroom daily.
Yes.
So, yes.
Absolutely. And so in a way, I invite you to think about SEL in a very different light. SEL is not just a subject to be taught or learned. SEL is a way to empower your students to speak up for themselves. And in doing so, in having these conversations, in being able to have the words to express how they feel, but in order to have this classroom culture where the ways you express things become a common part of your culture. You've now increased how students develop relationships with each other, and develop, these ways of going, oh, wait a second, we left you out. We didn't mean to, but now we've developed this awareness of what that means, right?
Yes.
So it's a beautiful way of introducing that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was so inspiring. I'm serious. It's just every single time I talk to you, I feel inspired, and it reminds me of the good, like, pure parts of teaching. So thank you.
Yeah. But, I think part of it though is, and we've talked about this before, is about that like, why do teachers leave? Why are teachers leaving? And, one of the key pieces to why teachers leave is because we personally, as educators, no longer get the validation and justification for what we've learned and know. It's been stolen from us. It's been taken. It's been taken from us, and here's the thing, it's been taken from our students too.
Absolutely. And it's just, unfortunately, that will get worse. And it's, and
It is getting worse, yeah.
well, I can't say how I know this, but I was recently speaking to someone about it, and they were talking about even doing that to administrators. Like they were starting the superintendent had decided that they were all going to have to, share out and do everything exactly the same across the district. And I'm like, well, my first thought was, now you're going to understand what you've done to teachers, who in turn have done to students. And I'm like, you're going to see what that is yourself, but also like, that's just going to be worse. That'll just be 10,000 times worse.
Yes.
And I'm like,
yep.
Yeah, because I feel like administrators can really make or break your teaching. Like I mean, they can be, I mean, it's sometimes it's the culture of the school. It makes such a huge difference. And so I thought that was a heartbreaking statement. And I'm like, you guys are going in the complete opposite, wrong direction.
Right. But
and how sad.
I would say though, it makes sense. And here's the reason why. When things get chaotic, which is like right now, where we're seeing so many kids that have been traumatized by the pandemic, and teachers being traumatized by all the things that are being done to them. The problem is, we as humans react by going back to what is familiar, what is ingrained in us. And that's what's happening to school systems right now. What we are seeing is a nationwide, system-wide failure of our education system. But the problem is, because our voices as educators, and the voice of my dog right now, who's facing her freedom, sorry, our voices as educators has been drowned out.
Yes.
And so instead of asking for our expertise to fix the problem, they're going back to what they think, what they know, which is lock it down. We're going to turn everything into a prison, and you will do what you are told. Right.
Yes.
And so here's the issue though, with that problem is, if you're approaching this lockdown in a wrong way, if you're approaching it from this mindset of students need to be quiet, they need to sit in their seats and they need to obey, what ends up happening is you eliminate, right? You lock up. So you end up with the same patterns we've had all along.
Oh, yes.
Punish those that don't conform, and they're out of the picture. But here's the thing. It's never going to change or raise our test scores.
No,
it's never going to inspire. And what ends up going to happen, I can tell you 100%, is our test scores will continue to drop and be abysmal. Because this is not the solution.
No, it's absolutely not the solution. It's a solution out of fear. And
it is fear-based and ignorance-based.
Ignorance, absolutely. I think that's so true. And I feel like we could go on that conversation for forever. Like that.
Oh, totally.
Riles me up. But we're out of time. So we have to, we can't go on that tangent, Yen. But
one thing I would say,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, one of the things with SEL though, that's so important is we have to educate our upper echelons. We as teachers need to be able to teach our management, our school boards and things like that, the things that are going to help. Yes. Oftentimes what I find is, we end up as teachers being so demoralized that we forget our voices.
Yeah.
And so the only way that we're going to actually be able to change the system is we need to step out of our classrooms and actually educate our society.
Yes. Yes.
So
I totally agree. 100%.
Yeah.
I could do a standing ovation for that. Yes. Okay. So where can people find you? And also they're going to be able to find you at STEMCon. So that's exciting.
Yes.
So tell us where they can find you.
Absolutely.
And then send me your link so I can drop them in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. I think one of the things, especially because we talked to SEL, probably the best way to find us, if you want to check out our curriculum, is at www.culturallyresponsiveminds.com. So they're a division of Key Learning. we're still working on like getting all our website and everything merged. So we're in the process right now. But you really should check out that curriculum. There's actually a free trial period.
Yeah,
You can
that
see
sounds
some of those
great.
lessons. And
Yes, that's
yeah.
excellent. No, definitely have to link to that.
Yeah.
So yes. So yay. And then we're going to hear more from you at STEMCon. So hopefully people will join us for that. And that will be very exciting.
Yes, I am really excited about STEMCon.
Me too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I need that boost. I need more of like this kind of conversation and more. Yes. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Trina. Thank you.
And thank you for sticking around. Oh, she's so incredible. I love to have her on the show. If you want to hear more, you can take a look back in the library of One Tired Teacher, because I think it's been twice. I should have that number for you right away so it would make it easier. You don't have to search. But I can't think of it off the top of my head. Anyway, you've got to come check out STEMCon. There'll be more amazing Dr. Jen Verhoeven and also so many other wonderful people. Trina Devery, teachingandlearning.com/STEM22. I hope to see you there. This One Tired Teacher is feeling fired up. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.